and welcome to KidsCorner. I'm Shirley, and I've built a little fort around me because I got the idea about the story that I'm going to tell you about Jonah, that somebody said it was their favorite memory about Sunday school was they got to be under the table in Sunday school in a fort to listen to the story of Jonah. And I'm here with my friend Sir Winston, and I have a whale and a ship that my dad made to talk about the story of Jonah. Jonah's one of the books in the Bible. A long time ago, before you were born, before your parents were born, even before Jesus was born, there was a man called Jonah. And he lived not too far away from where Jesus grew up in Nazareth. And one day, God spoke to him. And God said to him, Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh. And Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh. That was the city of the enemies of Israel. Jonah didn't say anything to God. Jonah thought. And he decided what he was going to do was he was going to run away from God. So rather than going that way to Nineveh, Jonah went that way to the coast. And then he bought a ticket on a boat to the farthest place he could think of, a place called Tarshish. And it was nearly as far away as here to Vancouver. Jonah got on the ship, and he was feeling pretty pleased with himself. And as the ship went out from the dock, now the ship didn't kind of look like this. This is a more recent looking one. Jonah went below deck. He was kind of tired, and he went to bed. And he went into a deep, deep sleep. And Jonah probably even snored. But meanwhile, up on deck, things weren't going so well. The wind had started to blow. Whoo! Can you make that sound? Whoo! And the ship had started to go up and down and side to side. And the sailors were starting to get nervous. And it was going more and more, and they were getting more scared. And they started to call out to their gods, save us, save us. And the wind got stronger and stronger. You ready for the wind sound? Ooh! Hear it howl? Can you make the wind howl? Ooh! And up and down. And so they decided, well, perhaps what they do to help their chances is throw some of the cargo overboard. And they did that. But the ship was still tossing and turning. And the captain looked around, and he counted heads. And he thought, Jonah's missing. So he went downstairs, down into the hold, and what could he hear? Jonah, sound asleep. So the captain reached out and he took Jonah by the shoulder and he shook him and he said, how can you sleep at a time like this? And Jonah woke up and he said, there's a storm going on. You get up above decks and start calling on your God to save us. So Jonah went up the stairs to the deck, to the ship that was tossing and turning in the waves. And the things were getting scarier and scarier for the sailors. Tossing and turning, and the waves were getting higher and higher, and the wind was getting stronger and stronger. And the sailors were thinking, we've never seen a storm like this. This has got to be somebody's fault. They looked around and they thought, Jonah, Jonah, what have you been doing? Why is this happening? And Jonah realized this is happening because I'm trying to run away from God. And the sailors, it was getting worse and worse and up and down. And they thought, oh, we are going to go sinking one of these big waves. And they said to Jonah, what should we do? And Jonah said, throw me overboard. And they said, oh, we can't do that. They were thinking to themselves, if Jonah's God was so powerful to bring up such a big storm, what would he do if they throw Jonah overboard? So they tried to save the ship. They tried to row it closer to land, but it got worse and worse, and the waves got higher and higher. And at last they looked at Jonah and thought, ooh, this is what we're going to have to do. And they picked up Jonah and they threw him into the water. And all of a sudden, the seas calmed again. And that made it much better for the sailors on the boat. But what happened to poor old Jonah? Well, God sent a great big fish, bigger than this one, probably without the horn on it, and the fish swallowed up Jonah in a great big gulp. And all of a sudden, Jonah was in the belly of the fish. Think about it. He'd be in a space that was darker than this, and it would be wet because the fish would have swallowed water along with Jonah, and it would be slimy. And it would have other things that the fish was eating. It probably didn't smell very good. So what did Jonah do? Jonah prayed to God. And Jonah was in the belly of that fish for 3 whole days and 3 whole nights. And then what did God do? Well, he had the fish go up near land and spit Jonah out on the land. And I can imagine that Jonah stunk really bad, and he probably needed a bath. Not too long after that, God spoke to Jonah again. And God said to Jonah, go to Nineveh and give them a message from me. And you know what Jonah did? This time he listened to God, and he went to Nineveh. And when he got there, it was 3 whole days it took him to walk around the city. And he said, God is going to destroy your city in 40 days because he's not happy with you. And the people there heard him, and they believed him, and they started showing they were sorry. They wore a special cloth called sackcloth that people wore when they were in mourning. Everybody, from the king to the lowest level. And then the king sent out a decree that said, we've got to change our ways. No more doing bad things. No more fighting. No more hurting people. And call out to God. And God heard them and saw that they were sorry and were going to change their ways. And God was filled with compassion, with kindness. And he said, I'm not going to destroy your city. But what did Jonah do? Jonah got mad at God. He said, God, that's why I didn't want to go in the first place. Because I knew that you were a loving God and you would change your mind and not destroy the city. And so Jonah walked outside the city, sat down underneath a tree, and pouted. And that's the end of the story of Jonah. So what do you think that story is telling us? Well, it's telling us one thing: God is everywhere. You can't run away from God. And perhaps we learn it's good to do what God asks us to do in the first place. But it also tells us that God is a loving God. If we're sorry for what we do, God forgives us. So, why don't we end this with a little prayer, if you can repeat after me. Dear God, thank you for being with us everywhere we go. Thank you for the people who look after us. Thank you for the people who look after others. Help us when we are sad and lonely. Help us to do what you want. Amen. See you next time at Kids Corner.